All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. You could see the writing on the wall that Frank Reich was going to get his walking papers as the head coach of the Carolina Panthers, and it did indeed happen today. Now, the Panthers' offense has been abysmal this year, as they're 30th in the NFL in yards per game, as only the two New York teams have been worse. And in each of Carolina's last five games, they have scored 15 points or less. But what if I told you that the Carolina Panthers' issues were bigger than Frank Reich? And I say this because since David Tepper became the majority owner of the Panthers in 2018, he is now on his sixth different head coach. Wright just got fired after only 11 games. And he was supposed to be the guy that was going to come in there and clean up the mess after Matt Rule just got fired last year after less than 3 years on the job. Now, you go back to last year when the decision was made for the Panthers to fire Matt Rule, and Steve Wilkes, the defensive coordinator, was the interim head coach. That team gravitated to Steve Wilkes. That team would have gone through a wall for Steve Wilkes, and Steve Wilkes had the Carolina Panthers on the cusp of winning the NFC South and getting to the postseason. However, after all of that transpired, the decision was made not to retain Wilkes. And then on top of that, Tepper and the Panthers front office wanted to go out there and make a splash. And they went out there and got Frank Reich. And I mean, Frank Reich's a former NFL quarterback, of course, that epic comeback that is always going to be on his resume from the playoffs more than 30 years ago against the Houston Oilers when the Buffalo Bills were down 35-3. You think about it, Frank Reich once upon a time was a starting quarterback for the Carolina Panthers. Of course, he was the quarterback's coach when the Philadelphia Eagles, won the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, and he had Carson Wentz looking like an MVP candidate. And then, his time with the Indianapolis Colts as their head coach had its ups and downs, more downs than ups. But now, in firing Reich today, he has become the first head coach since the merger in 1970 to be fired from two different teams in consecutive years. Nonetheless, David Tepper wanted to go out there and make a splash with this hire of Frank Reich, and clearly it didn't work out. And again, Frank Reich is not blameless for what has happened with the Carolina Panthers this year, because if you watch the Panthers play, they've simply been god awful, especially on offense. They don't have an offensive line. You have a young quarterback out there in Bryce Young who's trying to figure it out. And the thing is, Bryce Young could potentially be a piece of the puzzle, but he's not going to be the guy throughout his career that's going to put a team on his back. He needs personnel around him. And, you think back to this young man's time when he was playing for Nick Saban at the University of Alabama. He had a situation where you're basically throwing to a first round pick on both sides of the ball, a receiver. You're handing off to first round running backs. You're being protected by a first round offensive line. Nonetheless, he doesn't have any of that right now in Charlotte, and the results are clearly there. So I'm looking at it like this: Frank Reich was supposed to be the guy to develop Bryce Young. It's an incomplete because the thing is, we don't know what this young man can become because it's only his rookie season. Everybody is not going to figure it out just like that. And I think aside from the Panthers' bad play, the other thing that is hurting the Carolina Panthers and possibly hurt Frank Reich is you go look at what's going on with D'Amico Ryans and the Houston Texans down there with that young man, CJ Stroud. And this was a man who the Carolina Panthers had the opportunity to draft first overall. They didn't. They felt that Bryce Young was their guy. And now you got CJ Stroud out there, and people aren't just talking about him being the offensive rookie of the year for this season. People are also putting him in the MVP conversation. So if you're David Tepper, you're looking back and saying, hey, wait a minute, we passed up on this guy. We were convinced that, Frank Reich could fix or could develop rather uh, the young Bryce Young. And clearly it has not worked out so far. But what makes matters worse the Panthers invested so much uh, in hiring Frank Reich. And then on top of that, they invested so much in Bryce Young because this team traded their first round pick. They also traded DJ Moore to the Chicago Bears. And now the Bears look like they're going to have the first overall pick in the upcoming draft for the second consecutive year, this time courtesy of the Carolina Panthers. And now you're a Panthers team that needs so much. You need to develop an offense around Bryce Young, and you don't have the first round pick that you need to go out there and get, let's say, an offensive lineman, go out there and get a Marvin Harrison Jr. for Bryce Young to throw the football to. So that is going to hinder his growth process and put him back even more. Now you got to go out there and do this whole head coaching search again. And for me, enough with the consulting firms and oh, we're going to hire this person to do a nationwide search for us. Let's cut all of that jive out. Go out there, use your common sense, use your football IQ, use your football acumen to go out there and find the best football person available to lead your team. Be committed to that person and let them do their job. Because clearly, if you have now fired two head coaches in about a year, that clearly means you missed on something. You missed on this hiring process. And the more that you have personnel changeovers at the top of your organization, general manager, head coach, and quarterback, it means more futility for this team. David Tepper has been the owner of the Carolina Panthers since 2018, and not once on his watch have the Carolina Panthers finished with a winning record. Not once on his watch have the Carolina Panthers made the playoffs. So when it's all said and done, yes, Frank Reich was a problem with the Carolina Panthers. But like I said in this title, the problems with the Carolina Panthers are bigger than Frank Reich. You look at it right now, David Tepper needs to go out there and find the right person to lead this franchise because the more that you mess up on this, the more it is going to set your franchise back. I don't know who that person is going to be. Stop trying to go for trends. You went with the trend with Matt Rule before trying to get the college coach. It clearly didn't work out. You went for a recycle, if you will, with Frank Reich. You just basically got to throw all of that to the side and go out there and find yourself a legit football person. The Carolina Panthers, some people can say they're not fixable. I don't know, but I will say this: you need a good football person, and you're going to need somebody who's going to be able to do less with more, due to the fact that the Carolina Panthers are bad right now, and they don't have their picks to go out there and try to plug and patch this team as much as they need to. They need an offensive line, not just an offensive tackle. They need an offensive line. You need playmakers at the running back position. You need wide receivers. You need tight ends. You need so much, and you don't have the picks to do it. So, as much as the blame is going to be on Frank Reich today, again, there is plenty to go around with this organization. Will David Tepper fix these issues before they get worse? I'm not sure, but I'll tell you like this: just like it is when you're picking in the top 5 or the top 10. If you miss on this head coaching hire, just like you miss on a general manager hire, it will set your organization back. And the more that the Carolina Panthers continuously have to start over at this head coaching position, the worse that they are going to get. It's 5 consecutive years for the Panthers with at least 10 losses. Okay. And if they don't get this thing fixed up soon, they're going to be looking at futility like the Cincinnati Bengals from the 90s, futility like the Cleveland Browns for the bulk of their time since returning to the National Football League. This is what the Carolina Panthers are staring at. So let's just see if David Tepper and company can figure it out. Because if not, things could go from bad to worse in Charlotte for this squad. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast. here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the Sports Discussion Group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. That you can check it out, drop a line, and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.